I never thought I'd be afraid of pouring a cup of tea. But there I was, at 67 years old, watching my hands shake so badly that the hot liquid splashed everywhere. My grandkids started taking the teapot from me, saying, "Let me help you with that, Grandma." They meant well, but each time it happened, I felt a little piece of my independence slip away. The tremors weren't just affecting my hands, they were stealing my life, my confidence, my ability to do the simplest things I'd taken for granted for decades. My name is Margaret, and 3 years ago, my doctor confirmed what I'd been dreading. I had Parkinson's disease. What happened next changed everything. The day I was diagnosed feels etched in my memory. The neurologist was kind but direct. "The symptoms you've been experiencing, the tremors, the stiffness, the balance issues, they're consistent with Parkinson's disease." I remember nodding like I was processing it all, but inside I was screaming. This couldn't be happening to me. The first few months were the hardest. The medication helped somewhat, but the side effects were almost as bad as the symptoms. I was constantly tired, sometimes dizzy, and the tremors would come and go unpredictably. I stopped going to my weekly bridge club because I couldn't hold the cards. I quit my volunteer work at the library because I was embarrassed about dropping books. I even stopped cooking Sunday dinners for my family, something I'd done for 30 years, because I couldn't trust myself around hot pans anymore. My world was shrinking, getting smaller and smaller until most days it felt like it was just me and this disease, locked in a battle I was clearly losing. My son David would visit and say, "Mom, you can't just give up." But what did he know? He didn't understand what it felt like to have your own body betray you, to lose control over the simplest movements. No one did. Or so I thought. About 6 months after my diagnosis, David showed up at my door with a flyer. "There's a Parkinson's support group at the community center," he said. "I'm driving you there tomorrow." I didn't want to go. The thought of sitting in a circle, sharing my struggles with strangers. Absolutely not. But David can be stubborn, gets that from me, I suppose. So the next day, I found myself in a brightly lit room with about 15 other people, all at different stages of Parkinson's. Some looked worse off than me. Others you wouldn't know had the condition unless they told you. That's where I met Alina, a former ballet teacher who'd been living with Parkinson's for 12 years. While everyone else was talking about medications and doctor's appointments, Alina kept mentioning her exercise routine. Exercise routine? I almost laughed out loud. I can barely brush my teeth without shaking. How am I supposed to exercise? Alina just smiled at me and said something I'll never forget. "Margaret, the tremors might control your hands sometimes, but don't let them control your mind. Movement is medicine." I didn't believe her, not really. But there was something about Alina. She had this vitality that the rest of us seemed to be missing. And when she demonstrated some of her exercises right there in the meeting room, moving with a grace I couldn't imagine possessing again, I felt the first spark of something I hadn't felt since my diagnosis. Hoping. After that meeting, I went home and did something I hadn't done in months. I got curious. I started researching the connection between exercise and Parkinson's disease. What I found stunned me. Study after study showed that regular, targeted exercise could potentially slow the progression of Parkinson's symptoms. It wasn't just about staying fit, specific. Movements could actually help rewire the brain, creating new neural pathways to compensate for the damaged ones. This wasn't just wishful thinking or some alternative medicine claim. This was published in medical journals, backed by neurologists and researchers from prestigious institutions. Exercise wasn't just beneficial for Parkinson's patients, it was essential. I learned that exercise increases the production of something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, which helps protect the dopamine-producing neurons that Parkinson's destroys. It can improve balance, reduce stiffness, and yes, even help control those frustrating tremors. The science was compelling, but I still had doubts. Would it work for me? Was I already too far gone? And most importantly, what kind of exercise could someone like me, someone who got winded walking to the mailbox, possibly do? I called Alina the next day. "Tell me more about this exercise routine of yours," I said. "I'm ready to listen." Alina didn't just tell me about exercises. She showed up at my house 3 days later with a printed schedule and comfortable clothes. "We're starting today," she announced. I was terrified. What if I fell? What if I looked ridiculous? What if it didn't work? But Alina had been where I was. She understood the fear, the hesitation, the feeling that your body was no longer your own. She started me with the simplest movements, seated exercises that focused on posture, breathing, and gentle stretching. The key, she explained, is consistency, not intensity. 5 minutes every day is better than an hour once a week. Those first sessions were humbling. My body felt stiff, uncooperative. The tremors seemed to get worse when I tried to focus on specific movements. I'd get frustrated, sometimes even tearful. "This isn't working," I told Alina after a particularly difficult day when I couldn't even complete the simplest stretching sequence. "It is working," she insisted. "You just can't see it yet." This is a marathon, Margaret, not a sprint, so I kept going. 5 minutes became 10. Seated exercises gradually incorporated standing ones, always with a chair nearby for support. Alina taught me to focus on big, exaggerated movements, what specialists call amplitude training, to counter the shrinking, shuffling motions that Parkinson's often causes. And then about 3 weeks in, something happened. I was reaching for my medication bottle, and for a brief moment my hand was steady. The tremor subsided just long enough for me to unscrew the cap without dropping it, something I hadn't been able to do without help for months. It was such a small victory. But in that moment, it felt enormous. Over the next few months, Alina helped me develop a routine specifically tailored to my symptoms and abilities. This wasn't generic exercise. This was Parkinson-specific movement therapy that targeted exactly what my body needed. We focused on 4 key areas. First, amplitude training, making my movements bigger, more deliberate. Parkinson's wants to make you small, to shrink your movements until you're barely moving at all. So we did the opposite. If I was reaching for something, I'd reach with my whole arm, extending fully. If I was standing up, I'd make sure to stand tall, stretching my spine. Second, balance exercises. We started simple, standing behind a sturdy chair, holding on, and lifting one foot slightly off the ground. Over time, we progressed to standing without support for increasing periods, then to weight shifts, and finally to more dynamic movements. Third, rhythmic activities. This was fascinating to me. Apparently, the Parkinson's brain responds incredibly well to rhythm. We incorporated music into our routines, moving to beats that helped regulate my movements. Sometimes we just march in place to a metronome, focusing on taking full steps and maintaining a steady pace. And fourth, functional movements, practicing the everyday activities that had become difficult. Buttoning shirts, writing my name, pouring that cup of tea that had become so intimidating. The routine wasn't long, about 30 minutes total, but I did it every single day. On good days, I might do a little more. On bad days, I'd at least do the basics. But I never skipped. Not once. Alina's voice was always in my head, consistency over intensity. Movement is medicine. Take your pills, yes, but also take your exercise. It's just as important. And slowly. Almost imperceptibly at first. Things began to change. I wish I could tell you it was all smooth sailing after that the exercise routine was some miracle cure that instantly gave me back everything Parkinson's had taken. But that wouldn't be honest. There were setbacks. Difficult days when my symptoms seemed worse than ever. Mornings when I'd wake up so stiff I could barely get out of bed, let alone exercise. Times when the depression that often accompanies Parkinson's would descend like a heavy fog, making even the smallest effort seem impossible. About 4 months into my new routine, I fell. I was practicing a new balance exercise without my walker nearby, got overconfident, and down I went. Didn't break anything, thankfully, but bruised both my hip and my pride pretty badly. For a week afterward, I was afraid to do anything but the seated exercises. The fear of falling again was paralyzing. I called Alina, ready to give up. I can't do this, I told her. I'm fooling myself thinking I can beat this thing. Alina listened patiently, then said, Margaret, you're not trying to beat Parkinson's. You're learning to live with it on your terms. There's a difference. She came over the next day and we modified the routine again. We incorporated my walker into some exercises, added more seated options for bad days, and most importantly, she helped me develop strategies for when I felt unsteady. The goal isn't perfection, she reminded me. The goal is persistence, so I persisted. And here's what I learned through those setbacks. They weren't failures. They were part of the process. Each difficulty taught me something new about my body, about my limits, and about how to push past them safely. I also learned that Parkinson's has good days and bad days, and that's just the nature of the disease. The exercise wasn't about eliminating those bad days. It was about having more good ones, and about making the bad ones more manageable. It's been just over a year since I started this journey, since that first day when Alina showed up at my door with her printed schedule and determined attitude. And while I still have Parkinson's, there's no cure for that, at least not yet. My life looks dramatically different than it did back then. The most obvious change is in my tremors. They're still there, but they're less intense, less frequent. I can hold a cup of tea now, most days anyway, without spilling it. I've returned to my bridge club. I'm cooking Sunday dinners again, though my daughter stays in the kitchen with me, just in case. My balance has improved significantly. I still use a walker for longer outings, but around the house, I can move freely, confidently. I haven't fallen in 7 months. My posture is better. Friends keep telling me I look taller, and in a way, I am. Parkinson's had been slowly curling me inward, but the stretching and strengthening exercises have helped me stand straighter, fuller. sleep which had become fractured and restless after mine. Diagnosis has improved. The physical tiredness from exercise helps counter the insomnia that Parkinson's can cause. But perhaps the most profound changes aren't physical at all. The depression that had wrapped itself around me like a shroud has lifted. Not completely. I still have blue days, but exercise releases endorphins, nature's own antidepressants, and I feel their effects regularly now. And the biggest change of all, I've reclaimed my sense of agency. For those first 6 months after diagnosis, I felt like a passenger in my own life, helplessly watching as Parkinson's took the wheel. Now I'm driving again. The disease is still there in the vehicle with me, but it's in the back seat, not behind the wheel. As a leaner once told me, Parkinson's may have entered your life uninvited, but you get to decide how much space it takes up, through exercise, through movement. I've taken back some of that space. I've had so many people ask me exactly what exercises I do, so let me break down my current routine. Remember, this evolved over time, and it's specifically tailored to my symptoms and abilities. Anyone with Parkinson's should work with a physical therapist or movement specialist to develop their own program. My routine takes about 30-40 minutes total, and I do it every morning after breakfast when my medication is most effective. I start with seated warm-ups, deep breathing, shoulder rolls, neck stretches. This takes about 5 minutes and helps me connect with my body. Notice any particularly stiff areas that might need extra attention. Then I move to what I call my big movement section, exercises designed to counter the shrinking movements of Parkinson's. I stand and practice reaching high, stepping wide, making large circles with my arms. I exaggerate every movement, making it as big and bold as possible. After that comes balance work. I stand near my kitchen counter for support and practice weight shifts, standing on one leg briefly, then the other. I do toe taps in different directions, focusing on controlling the movement rather than rushing through it. The rhythmic portion follows. This is actually my favorite part. I put on music with a strong, steady beat and march in place, focusing on lifting my knees high and striking my heel first when I place my foot down. Sometimes I add arm movements. Sometimes I walk around the room instead of marching in place. The key is maintaining the rhythm, letting the beat guide my movements. I incorporate hand exercises throughout, squeezing a soft ball, practicing finger taps on a table surface, rotating my wrists, opening and closing my hands fully. These help specifically with the fine motor control that the tremors affect most. And I always end with what a leaner calls functional practice, spending 5-10 minutes deliberately practicing everyday activities that Parkinson's has made difficult. Buttoning and unbuttoning a shirt, writing my name, picking up small objects like paper clips or coins from a table surface, pouring water from one cup to another. On particularly good days, I might add a short walk around my neighborhood or some gentle yoga poses that a leaner taught me. On harder days, I might do more of the routine seated or break it up into shorter sessions throughout the day. The key, as a leaner always emphasized, isn't what specific exercises you do. It's the consistency of doing them, the mindfulness you bring to the movements, and the determination to keep going even when progress seems slow. While exercise has been the cornerstone of my approach to living with Parkinson's, I've learned that it works best as part of a more comprehensive strategy. Over this past year, I've incorporated several other elements that, together with my movement routine, have helped maximize my quality of life. Nutrition has become a focus. There's no specific Parkinson's diet, but I've found that eating anti-inflammatory foods, lots of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and healthy fats like olive oil and avocados, helps me feel better overall. I've reduced processed foods and sugar, which seem to make my tremors worse. And I'm careful about timing my meals around my medication schedule to ensure optimal absorption. Sleep hygiene has become non-negotiable. I keep to a consistent sleep schedule, have developed a calming bedtime routine, and made my bedroom a sanctuary, cool, dark, and quiet. On nights when sleep is elusive, I have relaxation techniques ready instead of lying there fretting about being awake. Stress management has been crucial. Stress invariably makes my symptoms worse, so I've learned meditation, deep breathing exercises, and even taken up a simplified form of Tai Chi that a leaner introduced me to. I'm more protective of my energy now, saying no to activities or commitments that I know will deplete me. Social connection has proven to be vital medicine. Beyond the formal support group, I've nurtured friendships with people who understand my condition but don't define me by it. We joke sometimes that we have tremor tea parties, where no one minds if there's a little spilling. And perhaps most importantly, I've worked on the mental and emotional aspects of living with a progressive disease. With help from both my support group and a therapist who specializes in chronic illness, I've developed more self-compassion, more patience with my limitations, and a deeper appreciation for what my body can still do rather than mourning what it cannot. As my neurologist told me recently, Parkinson's is a complex disease that affects every aspect of life. It requires a complex, multifaceted response. Exercise opened the door to that response for me, but it's the combination of all these elements that has truly transformed my experience of living with Parkinson's. Something unexpected happened as I began to reclaim my life from Parkinson's. I found my voice. The woman who once hid her trembling hands and avoided social situations is now speaking at Parkinson's awareness events. The grandmother who couldn't pour tea is now demonstrating exercises to newly diagnosed patients. It started small. People at my support group would ask about my routine, curious about the changes they could see in me. I'd show them simple exercises, share what had worked for me. Then the group facilitator asked if I'd be willing to lead a short movement session at the beginning of our meetings. Me? Lead an exercise class. At 68 years old with Parkinson's. It seemed absurd. But I did it. And something magical happened. Seeing the hope on people's faces as they realized they could still move, still improve, still have some control, it lit something in me. Last month, I spoke at a regional Parkinson's symposium. I'm no medical expert, but I am an expert in my own experience. I told my story, demonstrated some exercises, and afterward, a line of people wanted to talk to me, to tell me their stories, to ask questions. One woman, recently diagnosed and terrified, hugged me with tears in her eyes. I thought my life was over, she said. You've shown me it isn't. That moment. That connection. It meant everything. I've started a small movement group that meets twice weekly at my local community center. We call ourselves the Movers and Shakers, a bit of Parkinson's humor there. We range in age from 58 to 86, all at different stages of the disease, all committed to the idea that movement is medicine. I'm not a trained instructor, We have a physical therapist who volunteers her time to make sure we're doing everything safely. But I am a living testament to what's possible. When someone new joins, often dejected and hopeless as I once was, I can look them in the eye and say, I understand. I've been where you are. And it can get better. Sometimes that's all people need to hear. That it can get better. That Parkinson's doesn't have to define the rest of their story. So now, advocacy has become part of my routine too. Not just for exercise, but for comprehensive Parkinson's care, for research funding, for greater awareness of early symptoms, for better support systems for patients and caregivers alike. The tremors changed my life, yes, but not in the way I initially feared. They led me here to a new purpose, a new community, a new way of moving through the world. Literally and figuratively. So that's my story. From fearing a teapot to leading exercise classes. From hiding my hands to demonstrating movement techniques. From thinking my life was ending to discovering it was simply changing course. I still have Parkinson's. I always will. Some days are harder than others. That's just the reality of living with a progressive neurological condition. But those days don't define me anymore. If you're watching this and you have Parkinson's, or you love someone who does, here's what I want you to know. Movement really is medicine. It's not a cure, but it's a powerful tool that's available to you right now. You don't need special equipment or a fancy gym membership. You just need the willingness to begin, to stick with it, and to believe that your body can still surprise you with what it's capable of. Start small. Be consistent. Find support, whether that's a physical therapist, a trained instructor, or just a friend who will practice alongside you. Celebrate the tiny victories, because they add up to significant change over time. And remember Alina's words that changed everything for me. The tremors might control your hands sometimes, but don't let them control your mind. My name is Margaret. I'm 70 years old. I have Parkinson's disease, and I am still very much living my life. On my terms. If you'd like to learn more about Parkinson-specific exercise programs in your area, check the description below for resources. Our channel also features detailed breakdowns of the exercises I've mentioned, modified for different ability levels. And if this video helped you, please share it with someone who might need to hear this message. There is hope, there is help, and yes, there is movement forward even with Parkinson's. Thank you for listening to my story.